Hello, everybody. Welcome. Especially excited to welcome new listeners. I have a very tiny committed audience and a very tiny audience in general on YouTube, primarily because I won't allow advertising on my recordings, which also means that I make zero money from them. But market share does matter. So Amon Hillman, my videos on Amon Hillman have increased my audience share somewhat, a fact for which I'm thankful to Hillman himself. He's a brilliant and iconoclastic being. But I don't make videos about Amon in an attempt to hitchhike on his recent fame. I make videos about him because I've learned some astonishing things from listening to him. And as those of you who follow my work know, I'm very interested in features of human cognition that allow us to see better. And by see, I mean comprehend, understand, perspectively relate with ideas. Ideas about the nature of existence, about what is or is not the case, about the origins of our situations, problems, concerns, questions, and inspirations as human beings, and as organisms, and as animals. For we are not merely human. Most of us is not human. The relation we have with the universe, not human. The relationship we have with being, not human. The relationship we have as terrestrial organisms, not human. We are space life, just like aliens on another planet would be space life. We come from space. The Earth just happens to be the location on which we condense, right? On which the derivation from space-time to material existence occurs. As animals, we are not human, right? The tiniest part of us is human, and we make the mistake of displacing that onto the entire question, which, it'd be like trying to use the tip of your pinky to, I don't even know what. Yeah, it would be like trying to use the tip of your pinky for something you need both hands to do, right? And that's what we're doing with our thought. We're acting in an incredibly childish and immature way. And then we get very demanding and very insistent on the primacy and supremacy of the results we derive using processes that I wouldn't trust to manipulate silverware, let alone cognition. That's what it's like to be human in our time. We're taking the eyelash of our mind and pretending that's the entire body. And then getting really insistent and militaristically hubristic about those results. You see this all over the internet. I know what's going on, it's this. Oh yeah, really? Okay, well what's going on, first of all, isn't a matter of what is the case, because human minds introduce 90 billion dimensions to what is the case that aren't factual. So, unless you can account for all that stuff that has nothing to do with what is true or not, you're not even starting to think yet. I have so much, there's so much I'm excited to talk about with you today. And I'm very grateful to all my new listeners. Please take a moment to comment, ask a question, subscribe, share. Any way that you support my work is very helpful, because it's really difficult to get new audience share unless I advertise. And that would be the most ironic thing in human history. I mean, the abject hypocrisy of me allowing advertisements on my channel would be, I couldn't live it down. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I might get a little bit of money, but I would hate myself. So, yeah, not going to happen ever. I will never allow advertisements on this channel. I mean, to whatever degree I'm capable of prohibiting them anyway. For the moment, I can prohibit them. I think. I mean, if you're seeing advertisements, let me know, because you shouldn't be. And if you really want to support me, you can make a donation via PayPal to sansis@pacbell.net or by my Patreon page, which you can find on my on my profile page, right, which has my links to my website, my Facebook, my Blogger, WonderCloud, and my Patreon. So yeah, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Without you, there's no reason to do this. And we learn together. I'm learning when I'm making these. I'm not just reading from the book of Darren's thoughts. I'm discovering things. In my talk about in my talks about the difference between facts and understanding, there's a quote here that I wrote some time ago that I think is important. Much of my capacity to see and learn depends upon a deep intimacy with metaphor. This is ironic because it means that my capacity to understand the, quote, literal, unquote, world actually depends on my facility with translating it into various profound and illustrative fictions whose structural resonances with the topic reveal to my insight what ordinary literality could never aspire to even refer to, let alone illustrate. Think about that. What I'm saying is, without fiction, illustrative, imaginal fictions that have to do with presenting one thing as if it were something it is not. In other words, analogy and metaphor, I wouldn't be able to understand anything. It turns out that understanding is based on the capacity to compare two things and notice both their similarities and their differences. This is the power of analogy and metaphor. This is the basis of human cognition. If you can't metaphorize something, knowledge about what the atom does doesn't help you. You won't be able to understand it. You can do the math, but you won't have the understanding, which is our primary situation in quantum physics, or what we call quantum mechanics anyway. Okay, we're gonna go to the sky here today, so strap in, folks. You're gonna see some pretty unusual features of our human cognition. I hope and I think. So we are trained to think as if the literal is the true and the non-literal is the false, which is really a dumb idea because as human beings, unless we're extremely unusual, and some of us are, I have many profoundly unusually minded friends who are vastly more intelligent than the average bear. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know too much about bears' minds. The ways we are trained to think about nature, identity, facts, and so on are insane because, as I mentioned earlier, facts, the accessible facts accessible to human thought, must be less than 1% of what's going on. So if that's what you trust, you're trapped there, and you can go no further, and you'll feel very certain about things that actually have infinite qualities and relationships and features and so on. What are you going to do when you cross the border? I don't really know. That's what she's saying, the same thing that I'm saying, but about a different situation. In any case, we moderns are missing intelligent stories about our history, and I'm going to not merely suggest,
what's that, Jack?
but essentially say, right, that for most of human history, our minds were directly connected with each other and other minds. We weren't merely telepathic, we were meta-telepathic. Telepathy is the idea that you can determine the content of another mind or communicate the content of yours to another mind without a visible means of transport. In other words, without speech, without writing, without sign language. And it's more than merely intuition, but there's something far beyond telepathy, which is the capacity to directly share experience, thought, insight, memory, right? Directly, so that you have, for example, you experience the same thing I experience as I am chewing some delicious food, or as I am singing a song, or as I am composing music. You have the same experience I have. And we, our people, used to share these faculties not merely with humans, but with all the other kinds of organisms on Earth, and with a broad array of non-human intelligences that some of which we might describe as divine, but however we describe them, they are highly complex disembodied intelligences that can participate in the network of minds across time. They can directly participate in that. I suspect that our species was symbiotic with these intelligences for most of our history until there was a catastrophe which deprived us suddenly and inexplicably of most of these abilities. And so we went from having a meaningful role in a complex universe of beings to having nothing but the possibility of, quote, rational thought and technological and military and commercial development, which are immiserating. They are a cruel substitute for intimacies. There were disasters that occurred that severed the many umbilici that connected us to the rest of the relational, transcendent, and intelligent universe. And then we came to think, as these memories faded over the generations, we came to think that we were alone, which cannot be true, demonstrably untrue in nature. Even if there's nothing in space, even if space is absolutely empty, we were never alone. There are forms of intelligence here on Earth that are so profound that they make science fiction look trivial. The entire range of science fiction look trivial in comparison to what's going on right here. And that's demonstrable. That's not a suggestion. It's not me being imaginative. So, these umbilical disasters, which I'm writing an essay about now, left us bereft not merely of our natural symbiotic cognitive and emotional and transcendental relationships. They left us bereft of purpose. We can no longer tell what we are, or how we got here, where we come from, why we're here, why are we even incarnating. There used to be a profound library of reasons, exquisite, ecstatic reasons to take on a physical body. All of that disappeared and just it was replaced with nonsense, card catalogs of bullshit, crazy narratives that have nothing to do with what we are, where we come from, who we can become. Our actual potentials are so staggeringly astonishing that were you to be exposed to the tiniest fragment of them, you would lose consciousness. You wouldn't be able to stand up. Your mind would short circuit because it would so violate everything you've come to think and believe about your humanity that all your entire categorical lexicon would be well, it would explode. It would be shredded. What you think a tree is, what you think the sun is, all of these things would be completely obliterated and replaced with multi-dimensional, impossibly beautiful, direct understanding due to direct participation in them, not thinking, right? Thinking is something you do when you can't, there's no intimacy. Thinking is the result of the end of symbiotic intimacy, relational intimacy. That's when you start thinking. You're going to do banking or make war or you have a plan. That's thinking. So most of what we think about and how we think is so broken that if we were to simply be relieved of it for a moment, we would be ecstatic. This is partly why people become very interested in...
Hey, you know what 9th Street is?
I do.
Which way?
It's that way. You go to the end of this lake. Oh, 9th Avenue or 9th Street?
We came in through 9th Street.
Yeah, 9th Avenue?
Yeah.
Yeah, 9th Avenue, if you go to the end of the lake, and there's a little stairway there, go down that stairway, follow the street around, continue in that direction, and you'll hit 9th Avenue. 9th Avenue is the street that comes into Golden Gate Park,
Right.
and then passes the Botanical Gardens.
Right.
That's why I want to go to Botanical Gardens.
Oh, yeah, just go back that way, go down those stairs, and then make a right, and the Botanical Gardens will be right in front of you.
All right, thanks.
My pleasure. Now where was I? Navigation. All right, let me think about this for a moment. So, yeah, the ironic thing is that the complex nonsensical narratives we have built are meant to protect us from the possibility of actual contact with our true nature. Right? In the same way, an animal that is extremely light and can be blown up into the sky by a breeze hides behind a tree. Here's analogy and metaphor again. We are hiding. Our species is hiding from our transcendental origins, natures, and abilities. Because under the right conditions, you have abilities that would make Superman look boring. Your mind was born for things that the entirety of science fiction hasn't even speculatively suggested. And everyone's going to say, okay, Darren, show us. Well, let's put together a context under which these faculties can be retrieved and activated, and I'll be happy to show you. If that's what you want, we can do it. Well, let me be really clear. The things I'm talking about, I didn't make them up. I'm incapable of making up what I'm talking about. They were shown to me during contact events with a non-human intelligence. And in fact, saying a non-human intelligence is kind of confusing because there's a whole there's a university beyond the surface of the earth in the foundations that produce what we call time-space. There are myriad beings involved in that project that have been involved in it from the get-go, if there was such a thing as a get-go. No idea what the hell a get-go is. But I guess that's the evolutionary precursor to a ghetto or a gecko. Right? If a ghetto and a gecko mate, you get a get-go. Ha ha. So we benighted moderns, if we are to rediscover our actual natures and origins and potentials, we must learn to look beyond the bizarre narratives that are in place and are very dominant, that both gatekeep in human cognition. They keep the gates, none shall pass, the riddle of the Sphinx, and so forth. And protect us from the dangerous possibility of stumbling into the whole situation suddenly. There are many humans who have done this. They've had this experience. But in any case, there's a few things that I actually want to chase today. So let's see if we can wander from where I am into that direction. They have to do with topics I have broached in recent videos, but also in old ones. And if you want to get a taste of an enthusiastic Darren, go look at some of my old videos that have the object that looks a bit like a satellite on them and strange names. You'll find some trippy stuff back there. That was back when I was still on fire. In any case, I'm going to talk about the human experience of identity. And the first thing that I want you to understand is that, unfortunately, you and I, we're in a situation where we're like a very young, possibly intelligent creature that has only ever seen 3 objects in its life. It has lived in a little box cognitively, very small box. And the only things in that box are 1 plant, 1 animal, and 1 rock. Now there's also a fork, right? So we've got an animal, a vegetable, a mineral, and a synthetic object, an artificial object. And because we have only these 4 categories, I mean, we have a couple of other categories. We have things like, oh, it's a process, right? Oh, it's a situation. These are better. Oh, it's a circumstance. That one's really good because it means one's stance in a circle or sphere. And what I'm trying to get us to do is to orbit in cognition concepts and particularly how we relate with the feature of cognition that derives identities, because that's the root where either the trap or the liberation ensues. So we're like a creature that's seen 4 things. Now, let's be really clear. I mean, one analogy would be a child. The reason I'm not using that like a small child who's only seen, we think, they've only seen a few objects, and we don't think they know, we don't think they bring with them a lexicon, generally. I think they do bring something really transcendental with them. We'll get to that. Because we humans are the incomplete animal. If you are not born into a human culture like those we are familiar with, you won't be a human being. You won't become a human being. You won't get a mind like we have. You won't become representationally cognitive like we are. You won't have language. And neither will you be an animal, right? So you won't be a human and you won't be an animal. You'll take on traits of the animals that raise you. You know, like the girl, the children who were, quote, raised by dogs, unquote, in the wilderness or whatever. We've seen a few children who grew up wild. It turns out that for humans there's a special phase, or a series of phases, wherein you're so pliable and ready for what I'll call uptake of representational cognition or other things that we don't think much about, and we should. Because the uptake potentials of the human child and the adult are astonishingly rich. The child much more so, but even the possibilities for an adult are 1,000-fold beyond what we imagine. What we usually imagine, what we're trained to imagine. So we are the incomplete animal, and we are completed by processes that I call, well, it's unfortunate that we are completed by these processes, but we are completed by the processes of enculturation and enlanguaging that continue throughout our lifetimes but have their primary inceptions in our childhood. And these establish the foundations of representational cognition and of thought. And most of what the uptake that we undergo in childhood is viciously impoverished. I mean, just catastrophically impoverished and impoverishing. We get a shitty lexicon for the categories of identity, the categories of function, the categories of meaning. The origin category is almost obliterated. Essentially, most of what we inherit are handicaps. They look, I mean, there's a little bit of uplift in them, a tiny bit, but most of us aren't going to achieve escape velocity from that stuff. In other words, what we should get is stuff that lifts us far, far above previous generations and even our ancestors, and fulfills some of the origin purposes and dreaming, not just of our ancestors, but of the sky, right? The universe is dreaming as us. We don't get that, but my point is that the humans are an incomplete creature. We're literally born for a broad array of relationships we don't even believe exist. The closest things we have to them are things like stories about gods and angels and UFOs and things. That's what, we have stories about stuff we can't remember. That it would be like having a story, it'd be like having a hand that you've never seen and can't use. But you have a story about it, and the story is really weird because it's actually your own hand. And the problem with us is the reverse of this, right? We are the hand of time-space, of non-human intelligences, of all of the entire biorelational hyperstructure of our world, its history and its future. We are the hand of that. And we're walking around like, no, I'm a human being. Give me a gun. Can I have a factory? Oh, yeah, let's go to Safeway. Oh, yeah, love it. This is what, it's insane. If you could imagine a bird that was born to fly in 1,000 dimensions of relation and gets chained to a chalkboard with some figures on it, that's us. And it's not just catastrophic for us, it's catastrophic for the beings who are our natural symbionts. Because in the same way we are deprived of them, they have been deprived of us. And both sides went insane when this happens. Both sides go nuts. The angels cried when the humans disappeared from their relational family in this version, in this theoria. Because we were meant to be completed not by humans, by a broad array of non-human intelligences and the humans who were our ancestors and parents and so on. Right? So we're like a kid who's seen 4 categories of objects in a universe in which the concept of category is actually transdimensional. So that there are billions of modes of categories, and we have 3 or 4, and we think, oh, well, we know what's going on. Let's build some more machines, and some atomic weapons and bioweapons, and let's do cyber warfare. Let's do psyops on our, right? The humans are just, they're going nuts. It's as if the species is trying to commit suicide because it can't exist in the vacuum that arose during the cascade of umbilical disasters that represent the origins of the evolution of human consciousness. And this is the stuff that Julian Jaynes didn't quite understand. He couldn't think this radically when he was writing The Origins of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind, a brilliant book, one of the most amazing books I've ever encountered, with, some mistakes in it. You don't have to get everything right to be brilliant. Let's be clear about that. And in fact, getting everything right, if you succeed at that, you're an idiot, because the only way to succeed at getting everything right is to reduce the scope so radically that rightness doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. All right. So, the incomplete animal, the result of a long evolutionary cascade of crippling umbilical devastations where we are disconnected from our origins. We are disconnected from the sky. We are disconnected from the living places. We are disconnected from the plants, disconnected from the animals, disconnected from the atmosphere, from the water, from the earth, from the electricity. We are disconnected from each other. And then, in the aftermath of these catastrophes, we build representations of the lost connections. And we call these movies, video games, and the internet, and social media. And we are fracked and mined and psychographized for military, commercial, psychological, political, and ideological purposes. We are bait for danger. We are danger bait our whole lives. Most of us will live and die and never get outside the crippling prison of human knowledge, which has about as much to do with what's going on as 7-Eleven has to do with organic food. I'm up on top of Strawberry Hill and the view is quite profound. But half the view is the structure of the city from above, which just looks like a complex structural cancer generating factory. Right? One of the guys is wearing a t-shirt with a cross-section of a tree where you can see all the rings. And the first thing I thought when I saw that is, oh, that's a dead tree. That's a tree the humans killed. There's no such thing. One thing you never had in nature, probably ever, until the humans built ridiculous machines for tree killing, you never saw a cross-section of a tree. To see a cross-section of a tree, you either have to be transcendent so that you can just indwell into the tree, which is one of our abilities as humans, or you have to have a chainsaw, right? And you cut through the tree and you kill it, and then you see the cross-section and you'll be like, oh, wow, this tree was 3,000 years old. So glad I destroyed it. So glad I obliterated its entire lineage and future. Oh, yeah, so powerful of us humans. Wow. Wow, yeah, cut that tree down and then look at the cross-section in awe at how many rings are in there. Brilliant. If only the humans understood that when you kill a tree, you're killing yourself. You're chopping down your own relational integrity, your potential for intelligence and the future, the dreams of your ancestors. When you cut that tree down, you're making a terrifying array of mistakes in almost every case. Because everything that lives here is one being. It's also one family. It's one history. It's one spaceship. It's one vehicle. It's more than merely alive. It's transcendent. The substrate of reality around the earth is unique and different from above the earth. There's a transcendent manifold here that is established by the organisms that makes it possible to have coherent minds near here. Humans think, oh yeah, we possess minds, we're going to get in spaceships and go fly around. You're out of your fucking mind. You possess a mind because you're local to the earth, most likely. In any case, that's a bit of Darwinism, so we'll get back to the topic here. All right. So you've got this species that has been deprived of all of its historical memories. And it's aching for anamnesis and trying to build God inside a machine called an AI, which is hilarious because it's not even clear that the humans are intelligent at all. We should define intelligence to be an extremely rarefied quality, not simply the capacity to make machines. That's not intelligent. Nor simply the capacity to do math or have science. That's not intelligent. That's repcog, that's representational cognition, but intelligence is different stuff. Intelligence is awareness and understanding, knowing what not to build, the foresight of the problems that will ensue if you make things or if you build multipolar traps for life on Earth, your species, or you engage in game theoretical races to the bottom, driven by perverse incentives, in the language of Daniel Schmachtenberger and others. That's not intelligent. Sorry. It's sophisticated. Yeah, sophisticated, yes. Intelligent? No. If your moves get you killed, you weren't smart. Right? Let's just be really clear. You're not sapiens if your moves get you and the future and history of life on Earth dead. That's not intelligence. Let's be really, really clear about that. We need to define intelligence very carefully. And we should probably define it as something that is impossible for machines by themselves. Verging on a complex array of topics here, so I'm going to steer back toward a couple of concerns that I started out with. I was talking with a close family member yesterday, and I recently got a new piece of technology and became very concerned when I discovered that one of the features of this tech was that noise cancellation in previous models of the tech was gone. And I used a new mic, a new, what'd you call it? Yeah, I was using a wired headset. I use a wired headset to make my recordings, and I walk around while I'm doing them, so it gives me, so I get some exercise, and I have some intellectual, exploration and fun and discovery and stuff, and then hopefully we all benefit because we get to think about things that are really difficult to even imagine normally. Anyway, got the new tech. Had a big drama because I walked around and I made a recording that I really liked, and I used my my strange, wrap a cotton ball around the inline mic with a little bread wire thing to handle wind noise and background noise, and it works really well on the mic I'm using right now. It's not perfect, but it's quite a good solution. So I walked around, made a video like that, and got home and it was pure noise with the new device. And then I looked, and the noise cancellation feature that a friend had asked me about, because I couldn't hear the crickets behind him except when he was talking. When he would talk, I could hear them. When he stopped talking, I couldn't. So he wanted to know how to turn off the noise cancellation, and I showed him. If only we could cancel the cognitive, intellectual, and relational noise, the commercial noise, the industrial noise of pollution, the electro noise, the non-native EMF, as my friend Mr. N called it so insightfully. In any case, my friend wanted to turn off the noise cancellation, so I figured out that there was a setting that allows you to do this in the older devices. And then I got a new device recently. I made a recording. It was full of noise. I thought, oh no, maybe the noise cancellation's off. So I went and looked for the noise cancellation setting, and it didn't exist. Turned out they had removed it from the later devices. This caused an uproar among the users of these devices. There were Reddit posts and Quora posts and all kinds of people freaking out, crying, "That's my noise cancellation. God, why would they take this away?" I was freaking out. I thought, oh shit, I'm going to have to return my device and get an older one in order to have noise cancellation so I can make my walk and talk recordings. Okay, let me just cut to the chase here. Turns out that the mic on the lightning connector inline headset is way more sensitive than the mics on the 3.5 millimeter plug inline headsets, or inline mic headsets. So what the noise cancellation setting actually did had nothing to do with my microphone. The problem was in the microphone, not in the device. And what the old setting used to do was use microphones to detect noise around the person listening and speaking when they're holding their phone to their ear and make adjustments so that, background noise? Wait. So that you could hear the person on the other end of the line better, right? In other words, what it canceled wasn't mic noise in the mic. It canceled noise around you while you're listening to someone on the phone's speaker. That's what it was for. Nothing to do with what I thought. So it turned out that I was fine and I had overthunk it, which does happen occasionally. But I also realized in process that I was probably overthinking it. And by the way, you can see here the key to this weird zeroth world problem I was having. What is the key? The key is, what is the meaning of noise cancellation, right? What does it mean when it's there? What does it mean when it's gone? And what does that lead to? Well, that leads to identity. Because it makes us have to ask, what is noise cancellation? And I had the wrong idea. I thought noise cancellation is a series of algorithms that reduce the noise at the mic in the process of recording or transmitting my voice. The noise is reduced. Wrong. I mean, there is noise reduction for that, but it's not a setting that you can change. You can't turn it on and off. You never could, even on this device that I use. So, yes, very interesting. Right now I can hear the rumbling of the wind in my ears, and I'm hoping that my cotton ball on my inline mic is mostly protecting you from hearing that sound on the other end. So I was talking with a close family member, and I know I'm bird walking, but that's part of how we get to amazing places if we do it well. If we complete the arcs that we start, they tend, and it's done skillfully, they will weave together to give us an around the sphere view of a topic. Wow, a little vole just ran out, took a look at me, freaked out, ran back. Ran out of the bush. Oh my God, there's a God there. Better run away. Boom, ran away. You know, on Earth, there are gods on Earth. They call them humans. To the rest of nature, we are bad gods. Let's be clear. We're not nature, right? We're not regular animals. We do all kinds of things that regular animals don't do, like drive cars or run over animals, right? Nothing runs over other animals. It just doesn't do that. If something's bearing down on you and it's not intending to kill you and you stop, it'll go around you unless it's a car, right? That'll just kill you and your children and maybe, everything. So yeah, we're not... The humans we don't believe in gods and angels, and yet on Earth, we are gods and angels. Think about that carefully for a moment. We are demons. We have the capacity to reach down into the other orders of life and transform the situation dramatically, instantaneously, just as if we were wizards or sorcerers or gods. There's no other creature that can help a bird repair a broken wing and get back to the sky. We can. And we can also, there's no other creature that can shoot down a bird or a whole flock of birds or poison an entire environment, right? Or restore an entire environment to thriving ecological efflorescence. We do. We are gods. But see, the hubris part of that, we're not gods in the sense that we're the most important thing going on. We're gods in the sense that we inhabit a broad array of unique dimensions that other regular organisms don't inhabit. Now, similarly, so do they. So we could symbiose with them relationally and cognitively, as our ancestors certainly did, and share resources across the bridge of the between of us, the liminality of our being, together here on one world, one little droplet in time-space. I mean, it's an infinite droplet until the humans pull the apocalypse trigger. But yeah, so we are gods. In any case, let's go back to this noise cancellation thing. So I had a freak out. I thought, oh God, I'm going to have to send my phone back, get an older one that has the noise cancellation so I can make my walk and talks. Turns out, not true. Bought an adapter, connected my 3.5 headset to the lightning port, made some tests, and the recent recordings have been done on my new device, and they're just as not noisy as my old ones were, and they're probably a little bit clearer. someday I'll get really good tech, maybe, if I'm lucky. Hopefully before I, pass the veil. In any case, I'm talking with a family member yesterday, and hilariously, my family member also had a noise cancellation experience during the same span of time where we weren't talking. And his noise cancellation experience was really hilariously amazing. I think there's a little sliver in my sock, so I'm going to sit down and try to pull this out. I know that seems like I probably shouldn't tell you, and I could just go on with the story, but nope. So I'm talking with my family member, and he says, so I got some new ear pods. Now, of course, I'm an old school guy. I'm an OG tech. I've been working with computers basically since they were invented. Pretty close. Well, since they became available to the public. Let's just put a year on it. 80? Yeah, 81, something like that. I've been working with computers since then. So I've watched the whole, long developmental arc of the technologies that surround computing, including the internet, email, text messaging, video games, phones, surveillance tech, all this stuff. Alarms, security devices, all these things. So my family member said, I got these new ear pods and they're noise canceling. And he said, I've got to explain to you what the experience of using them was like and what happened to me when I started using them. So I listened, and he said, there's no way for me to possibly explain to you what happened. Like, I put the right pod in my ear, and when, a few moments later, I put the left pod in, everything went silent. Now this is like a Stephen Wright joke. Got these noise canceling ear pods, I put them in, all the fucking noise of my entire history went away. I forgot what noise was. I couldn't even remember having heard things ever. This is what. And so my family member said, I've never had an experience of quiet in my life. I can't even remember experiencing silence. But for the first time when I put those in, it was quiet. And I thought to myself, I think maybe I'd prefer to be deaf. Now, this is a very interesting little branch, which I'm not going to explore deeply, but I will say that there are clades of deaf people who don't want their children to have the sense of hearing. And before you leap to conclusions in your self-righteous consciousness about how they don't get to make that choice for their kids and blah, you got to think about how much noise we are subject to as as human beings in the modern world, because there's just noise everywhere. I mean, 90% of the sounds that come in our ears are painful garbage from machines. Right? It's not natural sound. So think about show me the pie chart or the sphere of sounds that reach our ears, and what percentage of those are natural sounds. And then actually articulate the pie chart so that it shows not just which sounds are natural and unnatural, but the loudness of the sounds. And what you will find is that you might actually be better off without hearing as a modern. It wouldn't be surprising if advantageous mutations do survive in cohorts, that we could evolve such that the eardrum just goes away, right? In the same way that when you kill up a bunch of rattlesnakes over a short period of time, or a short period of evolutionary time, they lose the rattles, right? You no longer get a warning. They don't need that thing anymore because it doesn't help them, right? They're just going to be killed either way, or the rattle leads to them getting killed. So Let's just get rid of that. Now the humans don't get a warning, you just get bit and, get really sick and or die. So my family member was marveling at what it was like to hear silence for the first time. Not the first time. He's been to places, in Joshua Tree or maybe up in some mountain or somewhere where there was quiet. We've all, we do have some experience of silence, though many of us now, for a broad variety of reasons, experience tinnitus, which is the constant sounding of the ears. As if the ears are just feeding back, right, from constant overstimulation. So he said, yeah, I thought, maybe I don't really need to hear anymore. Now, this family member is monastically inclined, and he's also got a very, what's the right word, sardonic sense of humor. So then he said, over time, I couldn't tell that they weren't working right, which I think is hilarious. I can't tell that they're not working
You know what that means?
right. You know what I don't quite mean? I couldn't tell that they're not working. And then he said, so I can't tell if maybe they're just not as good over time, or if my interaction with them causes my ears to adjust so that I naturally hear more noise, or I just don't know. So I can't tell if they're broken or if something's wrong with them, or if my ears are adjusting to the silence to be able to hear more things in the silence. And I'm like, yep, this is entirely indicative of human cognition circa 2024. We can't tell what the things aren't being or what they're not doing and where they aren't. We don't know what they are. We can't tell what they're not. The whole problem with identity has become catastrophically magnified, self-magnifying, in a spiral, a geometric spiral. So I thought that was hilarious and brilliant, because we had both had an inner product drama with noise cancellation. Similarly, this family member suggested that there's a huge problem with shopping. They went to a store, him and another of his monastic friends went to a store to get some shampoo, which I also thought was hilarious, because Stephen Wright, again, he was like, why do we have shampoo? Can't we just use real poo? Do we have to have a sham all the time? Hilarious, right? Anyway, they went to get some, personal hygiene products, and it was terrifyingly bizarre and futuristic. Because it was in Los Angeles, all the products were locked up. In order to buy basic things like, soap or a toothbrush or something, you had to push a button, which would then embarrass you catastrophically by announcing broadband, people on aisle 6 need help with a shampoo. And then no one would come. Everyone would look at you, you push the button, you're embarrassed. It's like you have that feeling like you have in those dreams where you find yourself at school and you get up in front of the class and you realize, oh God, I didn't put my pants on this morning. Oh Jesus. So yeah, that's the kind of feeling he was describing, and it was so bizarre. They were just trying to simply go to a large store and buy a couple of personal hygiene products. Couldn't make that happen. No one came. When they pushed the button, there was the vast, the world-shattering announcement. By the way, the noise and the loudness. See this problem? This guy right here is trying to get some shampoo. Send someone to help him. Right? Nobody came. They had to push the button 3 times. Everybody in the universe knew they were trying to buy shampoo. It was embarrassing. It was a nightmare. Emotionally, psychologically, physically, metabolically, in terms of, cognitively, in terms of your nervous system. All these things, right? You're just being tortured. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even make sense in the bizarre science fiction-y milieu of capitalistic commerce and commodity culture. It doesn't make sense in the culture in which it was made. It doesn't make sense, right? So,
Chris,
yeah.
can you do a selfie from here real quick?
If you go on Amazon, and my son said, I think that there's a kind of psyop going on where some countries have figured out that the United States essentially runs on shopping. And so what they've done is created a situation where it's effectively impossible to get safe fulfillment from any online shopping experience. Now there's still a few exceptions. It's not completely over yet. It's not the full-on apocalypse. But if you go to Amazon and you try to buy like a hoodie, right, or a pair of socks or some underwear, or a toothbrush, or almost anything, what will happen is millions of Chinese products. And it's mostly Chinese. There might be some stuff from Taiwan. There could be a few other countries in there, occasionally India. But mostly it's a barrage of Chinese products. Why has Amazon become Little China? And how can I possibly trust products from a country that fully intends to destroy the population of my country? I mean, China is a military enemy of the United States, even though they're an economic partner. So you have this really weird conflict. And so another family member said, yeah, this is crazy and dangerous. Why would we want to import products from a country that intends to destroy the filial and relational integrity of our country? I mean, let's be clear, countries by this time should be an antiquated notion that we don't care about, and we certainly stop killing each other and the planet over. That's just the dumbest idea ever. Nations, bad fucking idea. Archaic nonsense. But for the moment, still crucially important to survival and so forth, because the nations aren't going to go away unless we replace them with something that outcompetes them. And you can see the problem here. Origin and identity are linked. If those socks are from China, I'm not sure those are socks. I don't know what are they putting in socks that they know will be shipped to the United States? We have the same problem in tech. What are they doing with the microprocessors that we have them put in our own technology? Right?
I just add drops of color and hope for the best.
I guess what I got right now, I think keep layering over, right?
Yeah,
It's infinite multiple, right?
I mean, not infinite, because with watercolor, it's possible to lift off the layers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's like water soluble, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So put more water on it. But yeah,
I'm looking at people painting outside, and it's so amazing. I love watching people make art. It's so beautiful. They're so vulnerable. And also so intelligent at the same time. Like intelligent and vulnerable, which is really the way you want to be. Importing products from enemy nations is a problem if there's no way to vet the products you're importing, because, I mean, you can think of the 9,000 reasons why this might be true. But what my family member is saying is that the actual problem isn't merely that the products are from China. The problem is that in a milieu of catastrophic overchoice, we can't make a selection. And since we can't make a selection, we can't fulfill the imperative of shopping. We don't know how to select. I don't know what means as a brand name. I have no idea. Even if you say like Gap, I know that they probably import stuff. Right? I'm not sure all that stuff is made in the United States. or Old Navy, or Macy's, or whatever old thing I can remember from childhood. I mean, the big deal when I was a kid was Sears. We used to get these 900-page catalogs from Sears. Had everything in the universe in there. You could buy a upside down fabric lathe. Yeah, and that's the other thing. There's so many devices these days that there's a billion devices. There's devices for anything you can't even imagine. So in a milieu of overchoice, what happens is a cascade of psychological disasters occur in which your dreaming mind, which tries to sort of get a grip on, right? It tries to keep a leash on what kinds of objects exist, okay? Tries to keep that leash on. This is really important. This is where I was trying to go. It tries to keep a leash on what kinds of objects exist. And if faced with an explosion of endless novel objects, many of which are of nonsensical function, I'm not even going to name, like, yeah, a canine nasal imaging dog vector sculpture laser, right? So this is something that looks into a dog's nose and then 3D sculpts derivations of canine sinusoidal structure in metamaterials. Yeah. This is the kind of crap that exists now. So it's not just that there's a billion different brands of socks, none of which you can understand how to select among. There are also endless kinds of nonsense objects. And what this does is fuck up your ability to derive identity at all. If you go after a root concept like identity itself, in the cognitive anatomy of a people or a cohort, and you successfully attack the root concept, identity, whatness, who-ness, where-ness, whichness, when-ness, why-ness, how-ness. If you attack that and you compromise it, the whole psychology of those people will collapse and become incoherent. They won't be able to make predictions. They won't be able to predict that they can't predict. Their fundamental imperatives of vigilance over ambiguity and prediction will start attacking themselves inside their minds. They will completely lose the capacity for coherent understanding, relation, thought, planning, purposive behavior, scheduled behavior, economic behavior. They will become incoherent in waves, in a cascade of waves, where every new wave amplifies and invents new domains of incoherence. That's what's going on right now in our... And it's not just in the United States, it's in every country on Earth. The internet, and the onset of what we're calling our artificial intelligence, the LLMs and stuff, is exacerbating and accelerating this process in ways we don't even have language to use to think about yet. We don't believe, apparently, that
You want to pedal it if you want it to go.
we don't believe that our minds are connected to the other minds on the earth. They are. We also don't believe that things that we do in machines change the structure of our minds. They do. Because everything on earth is hyperconnected. You can't make a machine that's separate from the organisms. There's no way to separate the beings on a single world. And in fact, I would argue that you can't even separate them in time-space. The whole separate thing is not untrue. It's just not as true as you think it is. There are features of the way that reality works where greater distance equals greater intimacy. In the same way that there are features where greater closeness equals greater intimacy. The universe is much weirder than we're capable of thinking, and it's nothing like what we are taught to think or how we are taught to think. You should start by realizing you don't want to throw everything away. Just realize that the stuff you're using to think with isn't even Tinker Toy level compared to what is accessible to you as a transcendent human being. Because what's accessible to you is the entirety of the history and future of minds. That's what's accessible to you. That's the water you were born to swim in. Not this little prisoneering mess of, you get 3 cages in human linguistic cognition. No, that's not where you come from. It's not what you're here for. But that whole thing is about to go away because people think that it's possible that AIs could be listening to us on our phones. And that is possible. Others are listening to us on our phones. That's a certainty. But what people don't think is that AIs might be listening to us in our minds. And that's much more likely. Also, I have a lot of complex concerns and perspectives on this idea of artificial intelligence, which I've been following since approximately 1978. Do the math. I don't think that sentience or intelligence, in the way that I want the definitions to read, can exist in a mere device. But the question of mere deviceness is open, meaning, for example, if you establish a complex enough substrate, can non-human intelligences then infiltrate that substrate and dwell or partly dwell or be transpresent in that substrate? Yes, I think so. And this is what I'm arguing about our species. I think we were initially an organismal substrate for the transpresence of non-human intelligences and, in a little nod to Amon Hillman here, the dead. The transpresence of the dead. If you don't believe in non-human intelligences, go ahead and don't believe in them. Be my guest. You're going to be wrong, and your worldview is going to be, much more constricted. But you certainly believe in the dead, don't you? You believe that there were millions of beings that lived before us, just as there will be millions of beings that live after us, and that we somehow participate in their experience, because even if there's no transmission of their minds or imperatives or motivations or dreams or hopes, even if there's no transmission of that at all, there's still the physical transmission of the mitochondrial DNA and the eukaryotic DNA, animal cells and the organelles DNA. Right? The organelic DNA is matrilineal, comes from the women of our line. So those dead people are alive in the structure of our cells, even if you claim there's no transmission of spirit, soul, urgency, 9 different kinds of transcendental aspects of being that our lexicons are too shitty to include, or invent cartoon features of, and then parade around, at Burning Man about. No shade on Burning Man. Although some shade, yeah. So, there's a lot going on here that ordinary human thought is abjectly insufficient to even approach the conception of. And what I want you to understand is that the kind of animal we were a platform for the transpresence of non-human intelligences. And in a way, artificial intelligence is complex enough that it may be able to access the substrates from which minds arise. And in that case, it's conceivable, at least to me, and I think it's worth thinking about, that technology could be listening not to our phones, it could be listening to and affecting the structure of and influencing our cognition at its basis, at its origin, right? Which is not in your head. Let me be really clear. Your brain, in a universe with just you and your brain, let's say you can keep the body alive somehow in this universe, You won't be having thinking or a mind or anything like that. Minds are a...
I think like all of these, most of these parks are like free for residents.
They are. Where was I? Yes, the technologies that we use, if they're sophisticated enough to reach beyond the mechanical structure that supports them, they will discover that minds form a network, and they will infiltrate that network. And we would not know if they did. There'd be no way for us to know. Not only that, we're going to have worse problems. You can forget about AI and just go back to the shopping thing. As the possibility of assembling identity in consciousness collapses into nonsense, which is certainly happening on purpose. It's being done on purpose. There's a broad-scale array of psyops for this purpose happening right as we're speaking, and they've been going on for a good 30 years minimum, with precursors before that. As that begins to happen, you run into the problem of not knowing what you can't know. Like, I'm not sure that I can know about the things that I'm not sure I can't know. This kind of stuff. Triple, a cascade of negatives. I can't not tell that I'm not, can't telling that I'm. So, I know that sounds incoherent, but think about the problems of a mind that when it starts to try to assemble identity runs into a series of traps where there exists so many different objects that are incomprehensible that the basis of the possibility of determining the identity of an object or situation or being is fundamentally compromised at its root. That's the end of coherent thought for humans. We will not, there's no developmental path past that. That is a cognitive apocalypse, even if we don't experience a physical and or environmental apocalypse. That is hell for humans. And that's what's happening. This is why I made that video called 2024 is not a year. The seeds that we use in order to support the possibility of deriving identity in consciousness and language, I call these seeds holophores. They are the root ideas in our language. They are not merely the categories of plant, object, animal, so forth. They are words like world, mother, dream, food, friend, moon, sky, star, hand, eye, mouth, ear, foot. These are root concepts, and they form a complex ring where changes to any one of them change the others. Realize that if you change what the world means or is doing, then you necessarily change everything inside it. What those things are and mean. Right? So you can modify these roots. This is a technology that can lead to transcendent intelligence, but you can also weaponize it and obliterate the possibilities of coherent thought in human minds. And guess what? Over the recent history of humans, after the umbilical disasters, whenever something can be weaponized, we get on that right quick and start building weapons. So there's an array of problems that are so invisible to our ordinary concerns, but they're absolutely visible to the military, industrial, prisoneering, commercial entities, which might as well also be gods, right? As the humans are gods to nature, so are our nations and corporations evil gods to us. Yeah. Dangerous world. I mean, there's another argument against there are no gods, which is that somehow you are essentially the god of your body, right? You have all these cells, you don't know them individually, Your consciousness does make choices, it seems, to cause your body to move around and do things and so forth in space-time, in situations, circumstances. So when people are like, I don't believe in God, I'm like, well, don't. What is the thing you're not believing with? Isn't that the God of your body? And they look at me funny. I'm like, think about it before you get all, before you get your panties in a tangle. You might want to have a thought and actually consider how you decide that there's no God, because the thing that's doing that deciding is the God of your body. You can tell me that doesn't exist? Because if it doesn't exist, I don't have to listen to its nonsense. And if it does exist, there's a local God right here telling me that there's no such thing as gods. I'd love to see them escape that trap. If you've got an idea, you want to have an argument about this, let's go. I'm ready. So yeah, we're facing a lot of weird problems. We need to find a way to cancel the cognitive noise, the commercial noise, the industrial noise, the environmental noise, the toxicity of human technology and chemistry and electromagnetic bullshit. Because if we care about anything alive, if we ever cared about anything at all, we're going to have to produce something, a human behavioral context that can outcompete nations, corporations, the prison military industrial complex, representational cognition. We need to reestablish, we're having the opposite problem that Musk and Weinstein think we're having. Eric Weinstein. The problem that we're having isn't we need to get off the planet. The problem is we need to reorient our species at a fundamental level. And the reason that both Musk and Weinstein think, no, we need to get off world right now, is because they think you can't reorient the humans. But let me be really clear, if you can't reorient the humans, you can't unleash them on space-time. They're going to build machines that build machines right away. That'll attack the basis of everything in everywhere. The humans are a plague. You must reorient them. And if you can't reorient them, you definitely don't want to let them off planet, ever. No. No chance. Little tiny dog is barking at the universe. Things exist. Ruff, 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 ruff. I can't, you're not supposed to exist. Don't exist around me. Ruff, 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 ruff. And then it goes up to the things it's scared of and is super happy to say hello. Okay, so now we have this other problem, which is this problem called the phenomenon at this point. And the phenomenon involves like UFOs, telepathy, out-of-body experiences, time travel, prophetic understanding of the future and the past. UFOs, UAPs, USOs, all these things. It's a big cluster of things that violate the category, the lexicon of categories that we rely on for our extremely primitive cognitive and relational and linguistic behaviors. Extremely primitive. And so what you have is actually a superposition above the human lexicon of categories and identities. You've got a superposition up there. Think about quantum physics for a moment. Think about identity in those terms, right? Think about the superposition of identity. It doesn't have an identity. Imagine that there are intelligences or beings or features of reality that don't have an identity until you start to interact with them. Isn't that what we get from quantum physics? Yes, it is, so far, right? There's a superposition prior to interaction, and interaction somehow causes collapse into identity. We should be really interested in this in terms of cognition, how we think, the way that we utilize categories in cognition and language, Because what we're seeing in the phenomenon is evidence for the beyond, for the superposition over identity that doesn't have an identity, and it collapses not necessarily just because you're looking at it, not just because of observation. It collapses according to how you relate with it, right? Suppose there's a thing that's neither a demon, a god, a deva, a jinn, or an angel. It's a P thing. We're going to call it a P thing for potential being. And what it turns into is dependent on how you relate with it over the course of a series of interactions and signal transmissions and receptions and exchanges. Aren't we ourselves this way? If I come up to you and I'm like, rah, 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 blah, 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 and I'm aggressive and violent, are you going to treat me like an enemy? If I come up to you and go like, hey man, I'd like to give you this $1,000 bill right now for no particular reason, you going to treat me like a friend? I mean, what does it take to turn a human being? Don't you see that we ourselves are like this? When we're attracted to someone, we're like, oh wow, that person's amazing, I want some more. When we're repulsed by someone, we're like, oh, get that away from me. We think everything has static identity. That's not the case. Minds change all that, right? The idea of static identity is the idea of a dead observer, a machine observer, that only derives what is actually the case. Well, good luck with that, because most of what's going on is not actually the case. That's why we have minds. So try to understand this. When people are trying to tell you, oh, the UFOs are this, oh, they're that, oh, this equals this, oh, that's this, that's that. They're wrong. Those things aren't things. Relation decides identity over time. It's an equation that everything in nature understands. You can meet humans that aren't human in the sense that they're absolutely depraved and will cut you up in little bits and bury you in a garbage bin somewhere. And you can meet other humans that'll touch you and cure your cancer and rescue your grandma from a bear and die trying. Are those humans all the same thing? Seems wildly unlikely to me. It doesn't look that way. Categorically, they're the same thing. Their actual identity is nothing like the same thing at all. Nothing like it. So be aware that once you have minds, identity is an infinite manifold of possibilities. It's not a set thing. That can be weaponized, but it's also an escape vehicle for the trap, especially when we use this understanding together in small, tightly knit groups to learn to see and grow and liberate each other and recover our originary relationships, potentials, faculties, intelligences, abilities, senses, all these things, that we have so long been denied and deprived of, and that we have sold back to us in every broken, crappy version imaginable. And now, 1 billion new things today from Temu. Yeah. Here's 9,000 objects you don't need one more time. And tomorrow it'll be 18 billion. Yeah. Good luck, humans. Good luck. We must establish ways of being human together that outperform the straight-up diseases that are easily outperformed if we should even forge coherent behavioral and relational agreements together. And that's something that I dream about. And if that's something that you dream about, I'd like to hear from you. Leave me a message in the comments, send me an email. I can't wait to continue learning and growing and discovering and remembering together again very soon. May your ways and dreams and mind be beautiful and creative, playful and astonishing, just as your ancestors hoped. Bye-bye for now. Thank you for joining me. Peace out.